Let me ask you something that most men have brushed off without a second thought. Have you ever been standing in line, maybe at a coffee shop or walking down the street, and suddenly a younger woman looks at you and smiles for a split second? Your mind freezes. You wonder, was that for me? You feel the need to rationalize it. She must be smiling at someone behind me. Maybe she's just being polite. Don't read too much into it. So you brush it off. You pretend it meant nothing. But what if I told you it did? What if that smile wasn't meaningless? What if it was a reflection of something she saw in you? Something you've forgotten how to see in yourself? Most older men have been conditioned to believe they're invisible, that once their youth fades, so does their presence. They think the spotlight has shifted elsewhere, that they've aged out of the game. But the truth, that couldn't be further from reality, because when a younger woman smiles at an older man, it isn't always flirtation, but it is rarely random. It's a response, a reflex to something she senses deep beneath the surface. Not the hair, not the skin, not the suit you're wearing. It's your presence, your calm, your experience, your energy. And here's the part many men overlook. A smile isn't just a curve of the lips. It's one of the oldest human signals, older than language itself. Before we spoke, we signaled. Before we wrote, we felt. And women, more often than they admit, respond to a man who moves differently. A man who doesn't chase. A man who doesn't seek approval. A man who seems to carry a story within his silence. That's what they feel. They might not be able to explain it in words. They might not even realize it themselves. But deep down, there's a magnetic pull towards something rare, a kind of masculine gravity. And yet most men sabotage it. They reject the very idea that they're being noticed. They assume any attention is a fluke, an accident, a mistake. And in doing so, they miss the moment. They miss the message that they are still seen, that they are still felt, that even in a room full of younger men, there's something about them that stands out, not because of age, but because of depth, not because of flash, but because of presence. A woman's smile doesn't always mean come closer, but it does mean, I see you, and that's more than enough to wake a man up. So the next time you catch her glance, don't brush it off so quickly. It might not be your imagination. It might be your energy finally being recognized. The meaning of a smile. The next time a younger woman smiles at you, don't dismiss it. Don't brush it off as coincidence. Don't convince yourself it was just politeness. And don't let your insecurities speak louder than the moment. Pause. Take it in, not with arrogance, not with desperation, but with quiet recognition. That smile may not be romantic. It may not be an invitation, but it is a sign, a subtle reminder that you're still seen, that your presence still carries weight, that even now, you hold something of value. As men grow older, they acquire something rare, something no amount of youth can imitate. It's called experience, but not just any kind of experience. It's not about collecting stories or stacking years. It's about the invisible growth, the battles fought, the failures endured, the moments that broke you but didn't finish you. Real experience is not found in memories alone. It is the forge that builds resilience. It is the fire that tempers wisdom. It is the quiet strength that doesn't need to be announced. You can't buy it. You can't fake it. You can't speedrun it. Only time can gift it, and only pain can shape it. That's what she might be sensing when she smiles, not just a man, but a presence, a certain stillness, a life tested, but not broken. And you forget that. You forget that you offer something that young men haven't earned yet. Not just confidence, but conviction. Not charm, but depth. Not noise, but presence. So the next time it happens, when you feel that glance, that moment, don't rush past it. You don't need to act on it, but you should honor it, because it's a quiet message from the world. You're not invisible. You're just becoming real. The power of experience. When a younger woman looks at an older man, she's not just glancing at his face. She's not assessing him the way the world assesses youth, with metrics of muscles, fashion, or trend. She's sensing something else, something deeper. She may not be able to explain it. She may not even be fully aware of it, but her intuition feels it instantly. It's not his clothes, not his smile, not the lines on his face. It's his energy. It's the way he sits with himself, the way he walks into a room without seeking approval, the way his silence speaks louder than noise. There's a difference between a man who has lived through chaos and one who's still trying to outrun it. The older man has already been tested, not once, but over and over, by failure, by heartbreak, by life, and each trial left behind a trace not just on his skin, but in his soul. Gray hair isn't a sign of decline. It's a signature of survival. Wrinkles aren't weaknesses. They're pages in a story. A slower step doesn't mean he's falling behind. It means he's no longer racing anyone. He's walked through fire. And he didn't just survive it, he learned how to carry the flame without letting it burn him. That's what she feels when she looks at him. That's the presence that pulls her in. Younger men may be louder, flashier, and full of potential. But potential is untested. It's raw metal, not yet forged. Older men carry proof that they've been shaped by storms and emerged stronger, not harder. That kind of presence is rare. It's the stillness in the eye of the hurricane, the calm in the midst of noise. It doesn't demand attention, but it always receives it. And that's why she smiles. Not because he's flashy, but because he's centered. Not because he's trying to impress, but because he has nothing to prove. In a world obsessed with noise, presence is the ultimate rebellion, and presence comes from knowing pain, making peace with it, and becoming someone better through it. That's not something you can fake. You can't shortcut your way to it. You have to live it. Most older men don't realize they have this. They look in the mirror and only see age. They compare themselves to younger men as if youth is the only form of power, but true power is quiet. It's controlled. It's earned. It's the ability to walk into a room and shift the energy without saying a word. So, when a younger woman notices you, when she smiles, holds that glance, don't dismiss it as politeness or mistake. She may not know your story, but she senses the weight you carry, and she respects it before she even understands it. That's the power of presence, and it belongs to men who no longer seek validation because they've already found something deeper themselves. Presence and confidence. This isn't about power games. It's not about dominance, control, or proving anything. It's about quiet strength, the kind that doesn't shout to be heard, but speaks louder than noise ever could. It's about the man who doesn't need the spotlight to be noticed. He simply enters a room and shifts the energy, not through aggression, but through composure, through presence. That presence isn't something every older man automatically has. Far from it. Many have allowed themselves to disappear not because the world rejected them, but because they rejected their own value. They've let insecurity weigh them down. They've convinced themselves that age equals decline, that invisibility is inevitable. So they shrink. They stay quiet, not out of calm, but out of doubt. But there are others. Men who have embraced their journey, who understand that every scar, every mistake, every year wasn't just survival, but refinement, and they carry that understanding in the way they move, the way they speak, the way they simply exist. They don't demand to be seen, but they are. Undeniably, women feel it, especially younger women. They may not consciously know why, but when they see a man like this, something stirs in them. Not lust, not fantasy, something deeper. Recognition. It's the recognition of grounded masculinity, of earned wisdom, of solid presence in a world that is constantly shifting. And while youth is celebrated with all its flash and speed, these deeper qualities are what make a woman pause. Competence, stability, wisdom. These are the traits that don't trend on social media, but they leave a lasting mark because they're not easy to fake. A man who has refined his craft, learned to master his impulses, and gained perspective through hardship, he gives off something no young man can replicate. Not because of age, but because of depth. He's reliable, he's composed, he solves problems without panic. He doesn't rush to impress, because he knows who he is and what he's built speaks for itself. That's magnetic, not in a flashy, attention-seeking way, but in a way that makes people lean in, listen more closely, trust more easily. Younger women sense this, even if they don't know how to put it into words, because in a world where most people are pretending, a man who has become real stands out. He doesn't try to sell himself. He doesn't posture. He doesn't chase. He simply shows up fully, honestly, and that is rare. This is not about being better than others. It's about being fully yourself. It's not about boasting, but about walking with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you faced fire and didn't burn. When a woman smiles at a man like this, it's not always flirtation, but it is acknowledgement, a signal that she sees something real, something grounded, something she didn't even realize she was looking for. And that's the difference. Because when a man finally sees that in himself, when he stops chasing and starts embodying the world, respond, not because he's demanding attention, but because he's become undeniable. Stability and trust. Younger women might not say it out loud, but they feel it. They recognize something rare in certain men, stability, not the kind built on wealth or image, but the kind rooted in calm, experience, and direction. It's in the way a man moves with clarity, not confusion. The way he chooses purpose over chaos, the way he stands his ground, even when the world feels like it's spinning. That's what makes him different. You see, many younger men are caught in a storm of contradictions, ambition pulling them one way, doubt pulling them another. They chase thrills, but fear, commitment. They crave meaning, but run from responsibility. And women sense that instability. It shows in the way a man talks, the way he reacts, the way he avoids depth because he hasn't found his own. But the older man, he's walked that path already. He's faced those same inner battles. He's known the fire of desire and the weight of consequence. He's stumbled, been humbled, but he didn't break. And now, he offers something different, something steady. He doesn't waver under pressure. He doesn't fall apart in crisis. He doesn't lose himself when others panic. That kind of composure can't be taught in books. It can't be faked. It comes from living, from weathering real storms. And it's this emotional steadiness that becomes magnetic, because in a world full of noise, he becomes a quiet anchor. People trust him without even knowing why. Because trust isn't built in moments of ease. It's built in how a man shows up when things fall apart. And make no mistake, trust is one of the strongest forms of attraction. It goes deeper than looks. It outlasts charm. It creates a sense of safety most people don't even realize they crave. We're often told that attraction is all about appearance, about muscles, cars, status, but what really stays? It's the presence of a man who knows himself, who can sit in silence and still be felt, who doesn't need to prove anything because who he is already speaks louder than any words. That's what a younger woman often responds to, even if she doesn't fully understand it. When she sees a man like this, something shifts. Not because he's trying to be impressive, but because he's centered. She senses a strength that doesn't fade with time, because it was never based on youth. It was forged through experience. And experience doesn't just build knowledge, it builds presence. The misconception of invisibility. There's a quiet lie that many older men carry. The belief that with time, they have become invisible. Not in a literal sense, but in the eyes of society. They start to feel as though they're no longer seen, no longer valued, no longer wanted, as if their time has passed, and they've been silently pushed to the sidelines. And the tragedy, they begin to believe it. They move through the world with shrinking presence. They stop showing up with the same energy, the same fire, the same clarity they once had. They think, what's the point? But here's the truth. The world hasn't stopped seeing them. They've just stopped seeing themselves. This mindset doesn't come from nowhere. We live in a culture that worships youth. Flashy, loud, fast-moving. It glorifies energy, novelty, and surface beauty. And slowly, men who've built lives, carried burdens, and earned scars begin to feel irrelevant. They internalize a message that wasn't meant for them. That message says, you're old, you don't matter. But that message is false, completely. Because what most men don't realize is, they are noticed far more than they think, especially by those who understand depth. Women who value presence over performance, clarity over confusion, substance over spectacle. Younger women aren't blind to the difference between noise and groundedness. They feel the subtle shift when a man walks in a room and doesn't need to prove anything. They notice when a man carries calmness in a chaotic world. It's not about looks. It's not about showing off. It's about presence. The kind that can't be faked, bought, or mimicked. The presence of a man who knows who he is. But many older men dismiss themselves before others do. They let the illusion of invisibility rob them of their light. They stop speaking up. They stop caring for themselves. They stop entering the room like they belong there. And the world mirrors that back. He who stops showing up stops being seen. The damage isn't that people look away. The damage is that he looks down. When a man believes he no longer matters, he unconsciously starts acting like it. He shrinks. He hides. He avoids eye contact, not with others, but with himself. And that's where everything begins to fall apart. Because the very qualities that make him powerful, his experience, his steadiness, his insight, are exactly what the world is craving. But if he never shows them, how can anyone respond? if he doesn't believe in his own value? How can others, younger women in particular, are far more perceptive than most men realize? They can sense composure. They respect men who have endured storms and still walk with dignity. They feel drawn to those who don't flinch at pressure, who don't chase approval, who don't fold when life gets heavy. That is real power. That is what makes a man unforgettable at any age. But none of this matters unless the man sees it in himself first. Your relevance isn't tied to a number. It's tied to your presence. If you move with conviction, if you carry yourself with quiet strength, you won't be ignored. You might not get the same attention as the loudest guy in the room, but you will get something far more powerful: respect, and often, the kind of attention that isn't loud is the most genuine of all. So the next time you start to doubt whether anyone still notices you, ask yourself a better question. Do you notice you? Because the moment you do, the world will follow. Overcoming self-doubt. The shift doesn't begin outside. It begins the moment he looks in the mirror and sees himself not who he was, not who he used to be, but who he is now. Still here, still standing, still valuable. When a man realizes that his presence still holds power, something inside him reawakens. The weight of the world that once dulled his energy begins to lift. He thought he had faded into the background, forgotten, irrelevant, but in truth, the world had been watching him all along. They were simply waiting for him to wake up. Self-doubt doesn't crash through the front door. It creeps in quietly, through years of subtle rejection and of societal whispers that say, "You're past your prime. You've peaked. You don't matter anymore." These aren't just lies. They're poison. And worst of all, they're seductive lies, because if a man believes them, he stops fighting. He lets go of his posture. His voice loses its conviction. He no longer meets the world with presence. He shrinks not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, energetically. This is how the illusion of invisibility forms. Not because others stopped noticing him, but because he stopped noticing himself. And here's the hard truth. Younger women, younger people in general, they don't just look for youth or surface-level beauty. They look for energy. They look for certainty. They look for presence. When a man moves with quiet assurance, not arrogance, but calm knowing, it sends a signal, one that doesn't need to be spoken. Confidence shows in the way you carry yourself, the way you look someone in the eye, the way you walk into a room and don't need attention because your energy already commands it. But the flip side is also true. When a man doubts himself, the whole world feels it. It's in the way he hesitates to speak, the way his shoulders fold inward, the way he avoids being fully present. People feel that uncertainty, and nothing repels more than a man who no longer believes in his own worth. Modern culture loves to glamorize youth. It tells men their value declines with age. It tricks them into thinking they peaked at 25. And from there, it's just a slow, silent fall into obscurity. But that narrative is false. Your true value as a man doesn't come from your youth. It comes from your growth, from the pain you've endured, the lessons you've learned, the calm you've built through chaos, the depth you've earned from years of trial, error, and evolution. Strength is not about being untouched. It's about being tested and refined. But here's the tragedy. Most men don't see that in themselves. They stare at their reflection and focus on the lines on their face instead of the stories behind them. They measure what they've lost instead of recognizing what they've gained. And that's the dividing line. The men who age with confidence, who continue to attract admiration, respect, and even desire. They've mastered one thing: mindset. They haven't bought into the myth that age equals decline. They've chosen to see age as refinement, as depth, as earned power. They don't chase approval. They don't try to fit into a world that values shallowness. They build their own world and invite others into it with quiet strength. So if you've been living under the illusion that no one sees you anymore, understand this: it's not the world that's gone blind. It's that you've gone silent. When you show up fully, when you walk like a man who has nothing to prove but everything to offer, people notice. Women notice. Life responds. The question is, will you see yourself again? The moment a man decides to carry himself with dignity, like someone who still has worth, someone who still has something powerful to offer the world, responds, something subtle begins to shift. People around him, especially younger women, begin to notice, not because he's clinging to youth, but because he's walking in strength. And strength isn't about age. It's about self-respect. It's about the energy he radiates when he knows who he is and no longer seeks approval from anyone. A mistake many older men make is assuming their value has already peaked, that their best years are behind them. That youth was the high point of their desirability, their charisma, their relevance. But this mindset isn't just wrong, it's dangerous, because it causes them to shrink, to pull back, to fade quietly into the background. And in doing so, they hide the very traits that make them powerful. The truth is this: a man's value does not decline with age, it evolves. Every scar, every failure, every hard lesson adds depth to his presence. He's no longer guessing at life. He's learned. He's endured. He's become a man who has been tested and emerged more capable than ever. The world glorifies youth because it sees possibility, but possibility is not power. Experience is. A young man may be energetic, but an older man has endured storms. He has made decisions that shaped lives. He has earned wisdom the hard way. That's not just valuable, that's magnetic. Younger women notice this. Not always consciously, but instinctively. They see the difference between a man who's still trying to figure himself out and one who already has. They respond to the quiet certainty, the calm confidence, the strength that doesn't need to raise its voice. This kind of presence, it doesn't come from age alone. It comes from choosing to live with intention. It comes from refusing to believe that age makes you less. It comes from understanding that your story, your trials, your resilience, your character is what sets you apart. The real tragedy is that too many men don't see it. They grieve the loss of youth instead of embracing the presence they've built. But here's the truth: a man in his 40s, 50s, 60s who takes care of his body, sharpens his mind, leads with calm strength, is far more compelling than a lost boy with abs. The difference isn't physical, it's psychological, and the moment he embraces that, everything changes. If this message spoke to something inside you, don't let it stop here. Hit that like button to show you're owning your journey. Subscribe to the Stoic Spirit and turn on notifications, because we're just getting started. And if you're ready to become the kind of man no one forgets, leave a comment below. I'm done hiding. I see my worth. See you in the next video.